7 jelly beans is about the same weight as this gaming mouse, which is also about the same as a tablespoon of sugar. You might think the Logitech G Pro X is light, but this is a quarter of that. I was curious to see whether or not this would actually be something that was good to aim with, so I took my 3D printed Zero mouse, I remodeled it to fit the Zonkonig M3K PCB, and the result is something that I actually like quite a lot. No scroll wheel, no side buttons, no DPI selector, just an incredibly lightweight shell, some comfortable grips, and some really nice clicks. I mean, if you could imagine what a Formula 1 car would be like as a gaming mouse, then this is pretty much it. And it feels exactly like what you'd expect a 16-gram gaming mouse to feel like. It feels like, almost nothing. I know a lot of people say that about 40-gram and 50-gram gaming mice, but man, this honestly feels like just air. Now, if you're thinking, why would that even be good? It's mostly because of the extremely low inertia and basically momentum that something like this has. Lighter objects are more responsive than heavier ones. Many of us have felt this when it comes to gaming mice as well. If you've upgraded to something like the Superlight, but previously you were using like a G502, that is an incredibly noticeable difference to how your aim and your input would feel. And the thing is, those benefits don't stop. They continue until you get to 0 grams. The problem though is the amount of compromise when you go this light. So I wanted to make something that didn't feel like compromise, something where you have a really optimized set of grip points and not a whole lot else. That is really what Zero Mouse has been about, and the result is this. It's this unbelievably minimal shell, which is very extreme to look at, but it's also a super effortless, low tension aiming experience, almost as if your hand is just floating on your mouse pad. Now, if I wanted to, believe it or not, I could actually make this thing even lighter. This 16-gram wide prototype, for example, I'm pretty confident I could get this down to like 12 or 13 grams, but then it severely compromises that low tension aiming feel, which is kind of the whole point of this in the first place. At close to 10 grams, this thing would be so small you'd have to like really grip onto it and pinch it, which just defeats the purpose. I think this is why a lot of people say shape is king when it comes to gaming mice. Ultimately, you want to find a shape of mouse where it feels really intuitive to aim with, something that feels locked in, but also really relaxed at the same time. Nothing that feels like it's a lot of effort to grip. And that's the main reason why I kind of refuse to make this any smaller than it is. I mean, you put this next to a lot of the medium shell style mice that are out there, which a lot of people like, let's say the OP1, the grip width and the contact points are actually not that different. This shell is something that I've actually been pretty obsessed over for the last few months. It's what I'm calling the Zero Mouse V35. One of the biggest criticisms that I had on the V34, which I made as my first mod kit for people to test out this design, was that it could feel a bit flexy at times, especially under tense situations. So this new model is dramatically stiffer. I mean, it's the first thing that I upgraded. We've got this new crossbar support here, which goes between the thumb and the pinky. That has worked insanely well. And I've also added this little support here on the ring finger, which braces against the PCB. I've also reduced the wall thickness significantly, making it almost 3 grams lighter than before. And the crossbar here also works as a neat little holder for the battery. This massively reduces the moment arm and inertia that you feel on the mouse, especially if you're a wrist aimer. In simple terms, the center of mass is now closer to the base of your wrist, so the mouse now feels a lot lighter at the same weight. And then lastly, there are now deep grooves on each of the contact points, which might be the biggest improvement overall. The more surface area that can be captured by your fingertips here, the more control you will feel, and this made a massive difference. The Zero Mouse now honestly feels like a refined aiming experience. It took a few iterations to dial in the size of these and the pitch, but I'm super happy with how they turned out. I've actually been using the Zero Mouse now without any grip tape, whereas on the V34 with the flat sides, they were basically required. Now the material here is actually pretty interesting. I haven't spoken about it much because honestly I had planned to move towards ABS injection molding by this point, but after seeing how far I've been able to push this and how light I've been able to make it, it's just really impressed me. It's a 3D printed material called Nylon PA12, and it's printed with a process called SLS, or selective laser sintering. Basically, there's a laser which fuses each layer of a powder, and that powder actually acts as the support material for these overhangs that you see here. So you can pretty much print like whatever you want. You don't need to worry about support material at all. It's actually mind-blowing, the quality of prints that you can get with SLS, and it's the only 3D printing process where you don't need to physically print supports like you would with filament printing or with resin printing. So yeah, I'm able to print all of this with a complete unibody shell and only use 3 screws for the PCB. Currently, I'm outsourcing all of my printing to Zelta 3D in Singapore because the printers that produce these are very expensive, and they've done an absolutely epic job with these. I mean, if you guys are prototyping anything and you want a high quality print, I would definitely recommend checking them out. The best thing about 3D printing though is that you don't have to commit to a final design. You can keep tweaking it and changing it and upgrading it as you learn more about whatever you're building. And that is exactly what I've been doing with this. Injection molded ABS can produce a higher quality part though, and it is more cost effective. It is something that I still kind of want to explore for the final model, which will have an integrated PCB, and that should be ready by the end of the year. ABS also isn't that much more dense than this nylon PA12. It will though involve separating the existing design into 3 separate parts. So the ZeroMouse V35 is basically the end of the road for these mod kits. This will be the second mod kit that I've done. Mod kit, by the way, is where you take an existing mouse, pull out the internals, and put it in a new shell, which is what this is. I've said it before, but I'm not super keen on mod kits. They produce a lot of waste and they're not very cost effective either. They have though been extremely good for this project because I've been able to see whether or not people like this style of mouse as much as I do, and the feedback so far has been really positive. I mean, all of the changes have been, very gradual little improvements over time, but when I look back at the V1 ZeroMouse, which is where this all started, it is crazy to see how much has changed. I mean, if nothing else, this has been an extremely fun project to work on. Also, I definitely don't hate full-sized gaming mice like this. I mean, they've actually been a big motivator for me to make something that feels more refined and contoured to aim with. It's just, I think this is pretty much as good as a medium-sized mouse will pretty much ever get. I mean, you think about like a Final Mouse ULX, for example, 38, 40 gram medium-sized mouse. I mean, that is pretty much as good as a medium-sized mouse with that shape is really ever gonna get. But coming back to this thing, this 16 gram prototype, I mean, I love how minimal and extreme this thing is. It kind of just makes me want to play more simply because I'm using this. And if nothing else, it's given me a glimpse of what a truly endgame gaming mouse could feel like, at least for me who really enjoys this style of mouse. Even with this cable, which is one of the main things I wanted to test here actually, it's the same as what you'll get on the Zonkonig M3K. It's stiff enough that you don't get that much cable whip. It's not one of those really soft, floppy cables where you actually do get quite a lot of whip. This cable is stiff enough that you avoid most of that, but at the same time it's pretty thin and lightweight. Most people will still prefer the freedom of wireless and the convenience of a scroll wheel for games that benefit from that, but this extreme mode here is now definitely on the roadmap. And I will just say, gaming mice this light are not instantly going to turn you into, a top 500 Overwatch player or Radiant in Valorant, but also the world's best running shoes won't turn you into the best sprinter. The world's best camera won't turn you into an amazing photographer. That's pretty much how I look at this and really any other enthusiast equipment or tool. And also, good aim is so much more than just being able to move an object with your hand. It's about learning strafe patterns and animations. It's about predicting and anticipating where your target is going to move next. But when I swap between the ZeroMouse and a full-sized mouse, which is over double the weight, it is extremely clear what I would prefer to use.